Stay right where you are, sir. I need you both to keep your hands visible.
Officer, we understand. We're complying.
What is this about?
They say justice is blind. But on a deserted stretch of Highway 95, there are those who believe justice is only blind to them, while others can only see according to their own will. That night, Officer Derek Clay was driving his patrol car as usual, but his mind wasn't focused on traffic safety or protecting the community. He was hunting for opportunity, and when a charcoal gray luxury car sped past in the twilight, Derek saw what he had always been looking for: a target to flaunt his power. A black man, driving an expensive car, calm and unhurried. In Derek's mind, the story was already written. There's definitely something fishy going on. He didn't need to look at the speed. He didn't need a reason. He just needed the feeling that he was in control. Inside the car, Marcus Reed was driving leisurely. At 45, with a sturdy build and a weathered face, tonight he wasn't the man usually seen in closed-door meetings and sealed reports. He was just a father taking his young son, Liam, to his grandmother's house for the weekend. Liam clung to a toy car, his eyelids heavy, occasionally asking sleepily, "Dad, how much longer?" Marcus smiled. Almost there. He was all too familiar with the stress of work, with situations that could explode at any moment. But he also knew there was another kind of danger, not from criminals, but from people wearing badges. When the red and green lights suddenly swept across the dashboard, Marcus glanced at the speedometer. 64 within the 65 limit. He hadn't done anything wrong. He turned on his turn signal, pulled over, turned off the engine, rolled down the window, and placed both hands on the steering wheel, exactly as his safety training required. "Just sit still," he whispered to Liam, his voice low and firm, as if reassuring a witness in an interrogation room. Liam nodded, his eyes still dazed. Derek Clay stepped out of the patrol car slowly, as if walking onto his own stage. He adjusted his belt, touching the camera on his chest as if to record, but in reality, he deliberately tilted it slightly downward, a habit not of a good cop, but of someone who wanted space for arbitrariness. Derek approached the window, without greeting, without immediately asking for papers. He leaned closer, his gaze scrutinizing Marcus as if he were a criminal from the moment he existed. "Is this your car?" Derek asked, his voice drawn out, the provocation evident. Marcus looked straight ahead, calmly. "Yes. May I ask why you stopped?" That single sentence was enough to irritate Derek. He was used to fear, used to people stammering, hastily explaining, pulling out their papers as if their lives depended on it. But this man didn't tremble. No flattery, no evasion. Derek narrowed his eyes. "Just checking. This road has reports of suspicious vehicles." Marcus slowly replied, "I was driving at the correct speed. The vehicle is legally registered. Without evidence, this stop is unnecessary." The atmosphere grew colder. Derek felt his false sense of honor challenged. And for those who abuse their power, being challenged means being crushed. He changed his tone. "Get out of the car." Liam jumped. "Dad?" Marcus didn't turn around immediately, only whispering, "Stay still. Breathe. I'll handle it." But in his heart, he understood. This wasn't a test. This was a hunt. And Derek Clay, who thought he was the law, had chosen the wrong prey. Very wrong. Marcus opened the door slowly. He made no unnecessary movements, for he knew one painful truth. With those already prejudiced, every movement could be interpreted as opposition. He stepped out, stood straight, his hands slightly open to show he wasn't threatening. "I'm getting out of the car as requested," he said clearly, loud enough for Derek's camera microphone to pick up. Derek didn't respond. He moved closer and placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder with an invisible push, not strong enough to be called violent, but enough to assert, "I want you to feel inferior." Marcus turned his head, his gaze calm to the point of being cold. "There are children in the car," he said. "You're scaring them." Derek smirked. "Don't teach me how to do my job." Then he gestured. "Face the car, hands up." Marcus complied. Derek began searching him, with more force than necessary, as if searching for a reason to legitimize his anger. Marcus clenched his jaw. He didn't want Liam to witness anything, but Liam still peered through the rearview mirror, his eyes wide with fear, clutching the toy car tightly. Derek suddenly said something nonsensical, half talking, half provocative. "Such a fancy car. What do you do for a living?" Marcus answered briefly. "I work for the government." Derek chuckled, a hollow laugh. "Yeah, the government. Everyone says so." Marcus understood the bait immediately. If he explained further, Derek would panic or try to hide something. If he remained silent, Derek would press on. And with Derek's nature, he would press on no matter what Marcus did. Derek looked up as if he had just smelled something in the air. "I smell marijuana." That wasn't just words. It was the key to unlocking all the filth behind it. Marcus turned slightly. "No, I don't smoke. And my child is in the car." Derek leaned closer, his voice harsh. "Are you disobeying orders?" Marcus remained even. "I'm telling the truth." And just then, Derek moved on to the next stage, turning the check into an arrest. He pulled out the handcuffs. "Hands behind your back." Marcus paused. He could have finished with a sentence, but he looked at Liam, a child, and gaze that needed protection from the panic of a gunman. Marcus breathed out. "I cooperate, but you're making a mistake." Derek handcuffed him tightly, so tightly that the metal pressed against his skin. "Your mistake is driving over here," Derek said. And the voice was no longer that of a police officer, but that of someone who believed the world had to know everyone's right place. Derek pushed Marcus toward the patrol car, opened the back door, and shoved him inside like a package. Liam began to cry. "Dad!" Marcus leaned over, speaking through the crack in the door. "I hear you, Dad. I'm buckled my seatbelt. I'm counting from 1 to 10. You stay here." Derek slammed the door shut. Then he returned to the luxury car, put on his gloves, his eyes gleaming like someone who had just been given permission to do what he liked best, ruining other people's lives and calling it business. But Derek didn't know that. In the moment he pulled up his gloves, Marcus had activated something Derek would never be able to control, an invisible emergency signal. A seemingly ordinary watch on Marcus's wrist just sent out location data and an alert, not to a local dispatch center, but to a special network, where each such signal meant a high-ranking employee was at risk of being harmed under the guise of the law. And once the signal was sent, the story no longer concerned Derek Clay. Derek stood beside the luxury car, pretending to shine a flashlight, pretending to look for clues. He opened the front door, glanced quickly at the passenger seat, then at the patrol car where Marcus was being held. Marcus sat still, no pleading, no cursing. That silence irritated Derek. To Derek, the ideal victim was someone in a panic, someone begging, someone willing to give anything to escape. But Marcus didn't give Derek that pleasure, and so Derek resorted to the dirtiest step, creating evidence. He reached into his bulletproof vest pocket and pulled out a small packet of white powder. The action was quick and clean, as if he'd practiced it hundreds of times. He looked around, making sure no civilian cars were nearby. In Derek's mind, this was the same old trick. The smell of marijuana was just the entrance ticket. The bag of white powder was the verdict. He placed the packet on the passenger seat, deliberately leaving it exposed just enough for his camera to capture from a favorable angle. Then he turned toward the patrol car, leaned down to the rear window, and said in a triumphant tone, "Found it. Yours. Now no more arguing." Marcus looked at Derek, his gaze no longer cold, but a terrifying kind of pity. "You've just self-destructed," Marcus said. Derek laughed loudly. "Who will the court believe? A police officer or a man caught red-handed?" Marcus didn't answer. He just looked toward his luxury car, where a 360-degree camera system was recording everything in ultra-high resolution and uploading it to a secure server in real time. Derek didn't know that, and that very ignorance was why he could still laugh. Derek called for backup on the radio. Another patrol car arrived, driven by Sergeant Miller. Miller was older, more tired, the kind of person who just wanted a peaceful end to his shift. As soon as he got out, Miller saw the trouble: a man locked in a car, children crying in the luxury car, and Derek standing there with a smug expression. "What's going on?" Miller asked. Derek excitedly replied, "We caught a drug dealer. We found white powder in the car." Miller frowned. "Have you checked the paperwork?" Derek snorted, "No need. We have proof." That sent a chill down Miller's spine, as he'd heard similar things before every major incident. Miller stepped closer and saw a wallet lying on the hood of the patrol car, as if it had been thrown away. He picked it up and opened it, and instantly, all color drained from his face. Inside wasn't a driver's license. It was a special identification card, a federal badge, the name Marcus Reed, the title not some vague government employee, but the head of an internal investigation team dealing with corruption. Miller's hands trembled slightly. He looked at Derek, then at Marcus through the rearview mirror. Marcus said only one sentence, slowly: "If you don't want to be dragged down with us, you should open the door, right now." Miller turned back to Derek, his voice low but urgent. "Derek, you just stopped the wrong person." Derek froze for half a second. Then the instinct of a deeply entrenched individual kicked in: denial. "It's fake. You can buy it online." Miller clenched his jaw. "No, this is real." Derek looked around, and in his eyes appeared the most dangerous thing: panic. For an abuser, panic doesn't lead to remorse. Panic leads to recklessness. Derek snarled, "If you let me go, I'm dead. We'll stick to the report." Miller stepped back. "No, I'm not going with you." Derek raised his hand to the radio, intending to call for backup. But at that moment, a strange signal interrupted both vehicles' radios, a chillingly calm voice saying, "All units on Highway 95, this is federal authority. Lay down weapons, stand still, hold your positions. Tactical unit approaching." Miller froze. Derek spun around, and in the distance, the sound of helicopter rotors began to rumble like thunder. The helicopter's roar grew louder, weighing heavily on the air, transforming the deserted road into a tactical stage. Derek tilted his head back, his eyes wide. "What is this?" Miller didn't ask any more questions. He knew that wasn't the sound of a local patrol helicopter. This was the kind that only appeared when something very big, very sensitive, very impossible to handle in the usual way. In the sky, a black helicopter glided past the trees, tilting and descending, its rotor blades kicking up dust and gravel onto the road. A side door opened. Two snipers sat ready, their barrels pointed straight down. Derek swallowed hard. For a moment, he clung to the illusion. "I'm still a cop. I still have the right." But then the ground responded. From a distance, a convoy of black SUVs sped towards them, their flashing blue and white federal-style lights, not local ones. They braked sharply, forming a blocking formation, locking down the space. The doors swung open. A group of agents in body armor, with the FBI logo prominently displayed, poured out like a flood. "Get your hands off your belt. Raise your hands." The shout rang out, not a mere formality, but a command backed by real power and force. Miller immediately knelt, hands behind his head, his voice trembling. "I have nothing to do with this." Derek stood frozen, his hand hovering near his gun, and instantly, 3 red laser dots appeared on his forehead, chest, and arms. A female agent stepped forward, her eyes sharp and cold, her hair neatly tied back. Special Agent Sarah Vance. She didn't even glance at Derek. She walked straight to the back door of Derek's patrol car and yanked it open. "Are you injured, sir?" Marcus stepped out, his wrists reddened from the handcuffs. He took a deep breath, showing no sign of panic. Just a man who had just escaped an absurd cage. Sarah took the key and unlocked the handcuffs, removing them quickly and efficiently. Marcus rubbed his wrists, looking at Liam in his car. "Bring my son out. Block his view," he said, his voice even but authoritative. A male agent immediately ran to the luxury car, opened the door, and lifted Liam out, turning his back to shield the child from the chaos, and the man with a gun pointed at him. Liam sobbed. But when he saw Marcus, he reached out. "Dad." Marcus stepped forward, hugged his son tightly for a second, then handed him to the agent to hold safely. Then he turned back, and from that moment, his demeanor changed completely. No longer the father who got pulled over, but the commander of a machine that showed no tolerance for corruption. Marcus looked at Sarah. "Take his body camera immediately. Seal it. Get the data from my car. And search the car. I suspect he planted something." Sarah nodded. Understood. Derek finally found his voice. I caught him red-handed. There was white powder in his car." Marcus moved closer to Derek, only a few steps away. He didn't need to shout. He just spoke loud enough for Derek to hear each word. "Did you find it, or did you plant it?" Derek was speechless. Sarah held up a tablet, opening a video from the cloud. The image was crystal clear. Derek glanced around, pulled out a packet of powder, and placed it on the passenger seat. Marcus turned the screen toward Derek. "Technology is something you can't intimidate," Marcus said. Derek looked at the video, his face as pale as someone who had just seen their own sentence. Marcus turned to the tactical team. "Handcuff him." Sarah picked up the very handcuffs Derek had used and locked them onto Derek's wrists. "You have the right to remain silent," she said, her voice devoid of emotion, "and you'd better exercise that right." As Derek was escorted to the federal SUV, Miller remained kneeling, gasping for breath like someone who had just escaped death. Marcus glanced at Miller, not to thank him, but to establish a boundary. "You tried to stop him," Marcus said, "right?" Miller nodded frantically. I only found out when I opened my wallet. I didn't know beforehand." Marcus didn't raise his voice, but his calmness was more terrifying than shouting. "I'll need a list of all of Derek Clay's arrests over the past 5 years. All of them, including the broken cameras." Miller swallowed hard. "I'll cooperate." Marcus turned to Sarah. "Put Derek under expanded investigation. Not just tonight's. I want to know how many other people he's done this to, who can't call cavalry like us." Sarah replied, "We have a data analysis team. We'll dig through it all." Marcus turned back to the car, where Liam had stopped crying but was still clinging tightly to the agent's jacket. Marcus bent down, hugged his son, his voice warm. "Are you okay?" Liam choked. "Why is that man angry at you, Dad?" Marcus looked into his son's eyes and said slowly, "It's not your fault. It's not my fault. Someone misused their power. But you see, when I tell the truth, someone comes to protect me." Liam nodded, still scared but now with a sense of security. Marcus handed his son to Sarah. "Take him away from here. He doesn't need to see any more." Sarah softened a little. "Yes, sir." That night wasn't over. A local commander's car arrived, and the commander stepped out, his face a mixture of bewilderment and embarrassment at seeing the FBI surrounding them. He was about to apologize. Marcus interrupted. "I don't need an apology. I need an answer. Why is this man still in the force?" The commander stammered. We have a complaint, but not enough evidence." Marcus nodded slightly. "Is the evidence sufficient tonight?" The question didn't need an answer, Marcus pointed. "Seal the records. Preserve the evidence. And don't let any data breaches happen." Sarah added, "We'll back it up from the federal server. No one can delete it." Marcus returned to his car, looking at the passenger seat where Derek had placed the packet of powder. He told himself, if there were no cameras, if there were no signal, if he were just an ordinary father, tonight would have been hell. That very thought prevented him from stopping at arresting Derek. He had to open the entire system. As the federal convoy left the scene, the helicopter ascended, the wind died down, leaving only distant lights and the thick silence of a life that had just taken a different turn. Derek Clay would no longer be an active cop. And Marcus Reed, who had done this work in the shadows, knew that from this moment on, the case would become a blinding light because it touched upon something society could no longer tolerate. A man wearing the insignia using it as a sword. 3 hours later, in an interrogation room so cold it made one shiver, Derek Clay sat alone, his hands cuffed to the metal ring on the table. There were no car horns, no highways, no feeling of "I am king." Only the white light, the sound of the air conditioner, and the crushing silence. Derek tried to reassure himself. There will be lawyers. There will be unions. I am a police officer. The door opened. Sarah Vance walked in with a cardboard box and 3 thick files. She slammed them down on the table with a clunk, as if stamping an end to the illusion. Derek looked up, trying to speak in a strained voice. "I want to represent the union." Sarah opened her laptop, speaking as if reading the weather forecast. They refused. They watched the video. Derek froze. What video? Sarah didn't answer immediately. She opened a file, rotating the screen. A scene of Derek placing a packet of powder in the passenger seat. No cuts, no blurring, undeniable. Derek gasped, then closed his mouth like a fish out of water. Sarah paused at the exact moment Derek bent down to place the packet of powder. "You want me to believe this is coincidence?" she asked. Derek mumbled. I have reasonable suspicions." Sarah flipped through the first file. Reasonable suspicions? Here are the statistics. She slid out a table. Derek's body cam's signal loss rate was unusually high compared to the rest of the team. Derek said stiffly, "Old equipment." Sarah nodded. "Strangely, it's only old to you." She opened the second file. Complaints dismissed for lack of evidence. The third, arrests based on the mantra, "I smell it." Derek began to breathe heavily. Sarah pushed a cardboard box toward him. "Do you recognize this box?" Derek looked at it, his face turning pale. Sarah said softly, "We just searched your house on warrant. Your wife signed the statement as a witness." Derek hiccuped. No warrant." Sarah opened the lid. Inside were items that shouldn't be in a police officer's house. An expensive watch, jewelry, envelopes of money, and a notebook. Sarah pulled out her notebook and flipped through a few pages. "You've kept such meticulous records," she said. "What you took from the evidence storage, what you kept, what you used to set traps." Derek began to tremble. His defenses crumbled. The union hadn't shown up. The evidence was overwhelming. And now there was physical evidence at home proving this wasn't a moment of anger, but a predatory habit. The door opened again. Marcus Reed walked in, without a coat, his sleeves rolled up. He pulled up a chair and sat opposite Derek, so close that Derek was forced to look at him. "What do you fear most, Derek?" Marcus asked. Derek stammered. I didn't do anything." Marcus tilted his head. "You did. You did it tonight. And I want to know how many times you've done it before." Derek tried to change tactics. His voice choked. "I have a family." Marcus looked straight at him. "I have a family too. And you made my child cry." Derek lowered his head. Marcus spoke softly, but sharply. "Tonight you chose the wrong person. But the bigger question is, how many people before me were incapable of being saved?" Derek didn't answer, and that silence, in the cold room, sounded like the longest confession of his life. Sarah stepped out for a few minutes to take a call. When she returned, she placed the phone on the table and put it on speakerphone. "Your wife wants to talk," she said. Derek looked up abruptly, as if clinging to a lifeline. "Elena?" The woman's voice rang out, shaky but firm. "Derek, don't call me by my name as if you were still my husband." Derek choked. "Listen to my explanation." Elena interrupted. "They showed me the video. They showed me the box. You said you were on night duty. You said you did it for your family. It turns out you were robbing people in the name of the law," Derek cried. "It's not like that," Elena sobbed. "I'm packing. I'm taking the children. I don't want them to grow up believing that men with guns have the right to do whatever they want." Derek yelled. "You can't." Elena's final words sealed his fate. "Don't look for us. If you have any love left, disappear from your children's memories." The call ended. Derek buried his head in his hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Marcus stood up looking at Sarah. "Start tracing the victims." Sarah nodded, opening her laptop. "We've narrowed down 41 cases to suspected framing." Marcus paused for a moment, then said, "Add my case." That makes 42. That number wasn't a statistic. It was 42 lives, 42 families. 42 nights where the victims sat in cold rooms like Derek was, but no FBI agent came to unlock them. Marcus turned back to Derek. "Do you know Jamal Davis?" Derek looked up, his eyes red. I've arrested many people," Marcus said coldly. Jamal was a student. On his way to a scholarship interview, you framed him and called it business. Derek shook his head weakly, like a child caught red-handed. Marcus looked at Sarah. "I want to re-examine the samples from the Jamal case. Compare them to the evidence from around that time. Take DNA if necessary." Sarah replied immediately. "The lab has already done that." Marcus breathed a sigh of relief. He knew from here the fight shifted to a different form. Legal, evidence-based, procedural, and a system that would protect itself. But he also knew Derek had left too many traces. Habit gives the predator confidence, and that confidence makes him careless. Cameras, notebooks, stolen goods, and now a series of events with the same pattern. Derek was taken away for photos, fingerprints, and samples. The media started sniffing. The A police officer stops a car, and the FBI surrounds it. Incident spread faster than any explanation. Marcus came home late. Liam was asleep, his eyes swollen. Marcus sat beside his son's bed, placing his hand on his forehead. He felt angry not just because he felt insulted, but because he understood. If Derek dared to do this to him, a man with federal power, what would he do to ordinary people? Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat in his office, staring at the screen displaying the 4K clip. In each frame, he saw not just Derek, he saw the system's complicity. And he made a promise to himself. This time, it wouldn't just be about catching one person. It would be about cleaning out the entire filthy stable. 6 months passed like a never-ending marathon. Each day was filled with files, hearings, warrants, and disputes between agencies. Derek Clay was held without bail. During that time, Marcus's team unearthed even worse than anticipated. Missing evidence, malfunctioning cameras, threatened witnesses, and a series of blind decisions from management. When trial day arrived, the federal court was packed. People weren't there to see a convicted man. They were there to see if justice would truly open its eyes when the badge was placed on the scales. Marcus sat in the front row, not as a victim, but as a representative of the larger question: how many people have been crushed by absolute faith in a police officer's word? Derek appeared in his prison uniform, thinner and listless. He no longer had the arrogant demeanor he displayed on the highway. Before the judge, he was simply a defendant facing a string of federal charges: unlawful arrest, assault in the name of an officer, planting evidence, obstruction of justice, and civil rights violations. The prosecutor read out each line, each piece of evidence, each video clip. When the clip of Derek placing the packet of powder on the passenger seat was shown on the large screen, the courtroom erupted in suppressed outrage. Derek bowed his head. No defense was strong enough to mask that moment. The judge looked directly at Derek. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Derek stood, his voice hoarse. I apologize if anyone feels targeted." The phrase, "if anyone feels," ignited the atmosphere. People didn't feel targeted. They were targeted. The judge struck the gavel, fell silent again, then spoke slowly, each word like a nail. "You are not a good person who made a mistake. You are a predator hiding behind a badge." And when the verdict was read, a harsh sentence, with confiscation of property and compensation for the victims, Derek collapsed. But the court didn't stop there. Marcus had requested one more thing: to shed light on the fabricated cases. In the same session, Jamal Davis's file was presented. New forensic results, traces, comparisons of evidence, and clues linking him to Derek himself. Jamal was brought in, his face gaunt from years of hardship. When the judge overturned the verdict and removed Jamal's handcuffs, the cries of his mother erupted from the seats like a dam breaking. Marcus watched, his throat tightening. This was the real reason he pursued the case. not to avenge the handcuffs on his wrists, but to give back the time to those who had been robbed. After the trial, reporters swarmed the stone steps outside. Microphones jutted out like a forest. Do you think the FBI used excessive force on the highway? What's your response to those who call this a show of power? Marcus held Liam in his arms. Liam clutched his toy, his eyes scanning the crowd with a hint of fear. Marcus raised his hand for silence. He spoke briefly, but clearly. That night wasn't a show of force. That night was about preventing an act that could have turned into a tragedy. When someone with a gun and power decides you're guilty before the evidence, things can spiral out of control in seconds. He looked directly into the camera. I don't want this to be an entertainment clip. I want it to be a warning. Cameras always record, and the law will catch up, whether you're a street criminal or a criminal in uniform. A reporter asked about Jamal. Marcus nodded. We're setting up a fund to provide legal and educational support for wrongfully convicted victims. Jamal will have a chance to go back to school. The crowd murmured. Some applauded, not because they liked the FBI, but because they finally witnessed something rare, a system of self-correction in public. Marcus helped Liam into the car. Liam whispered, "Where is that man going, Dad?" Marcus replied, "He has to take responsibility." Liam hesitated. Take responsibility means being punished, right? Marcus smiled. Yes, punished for doing wrong. On the way home, Marcus was silent. He understood. A single case couldn't erase the deep-seated fear many people felt when they saw red and green lights behind them. But at least, tonight, a message was sent through both law and evidence. Power cannot be unlimited. And not everyone who gets pulled over will be surrounded by the FBI to save them. Therefore, Marcus felt an even greater responsibility. How to ensure that ordinary people are protected, even when they don't have an emergency signal, a special task force, or a cloud-uploaded dashcam. That's the question Marcus carries with him, a question heavier than the trial itself. And it's also the question that elevates this story beyond mere karma, transforming it into a lesson about trust and the control of power. In another corner of the city, the victims began to seek each other out. One person told another, "He also told me he could smell me. I also had a broken camera at the wrong time. I was also framed and had no way to prove it." The stories were identical, like copies. And when the Derek Clay case was exposed, those 42 people felt for the first time that maybe they weren't crazy. Maybe they weren't making it up. Maybe they really were being hunted. Marcus met with some of them, not to make empty promises, but to listen and gather data. He knew that justice wasn't just about sentencing Derek. Justice was about restoring the truth to each person dragged down, and that was much harder. Some lost their jobs because of their criminal record. Some lost their scholarships. Some lost their families because of the pressure. Some even lost faith in themselves. Marcus used the weight of federal authority to launch a review program, coordinating with the prosecutor's office, the lab, and independent lawyers. Each case had to be peeled away like a layer of dried paint, slow, persistent, and painful. In the process, Marcus also realized something. Derek couldn't have done it alone for years without those nods, those turning away, those let's just drop it. And so, the expanded investigation began to touch other links. Those who didn't directly set the trap, but signed off on it. Those who didn't directly arrest, but suppressed the complaints. Those who didn't directly threaten, but laughed when they heard the story. The machine began to shake, and when the machine shook, it reacted by defending itself. Rumors, defamation, pressure, even personal attacks on Marcus. Some called him a hero. Some said he abused his power. Marcus listened, but didn't stop, because Liam still flinched at the sound of a car horn, and a child's memory is something that must not be taken lightly. Marcus reminded himself. If he gave up halfway, the message would be, even with evidence, they might get tired and move on. And so he continued, not for the sake of his career, but because if the system wasn't reminded that it had to take responsibility, it would create another Derek on a different road, with a different family, and a different child crying with a toy in the car. A year after that night, in a closed-door meeting with the investigative team, Marcus looked up at the statistics. The number of cases overturned, the number of records erased, the number of compensation payments, the number of internal disciplinary actions. Those numbers weren't achievements. They were a record of the system's debt to the people. Sarah Vance stood beside him, her voice low. "We've reopened 19 cases. 7 had enough evidence to clear the names immediately. The rest need time." Marcus nodded. He knew that slow justice was painful, but hasty justice sometimes created new injustices. He demanded one crucial thing. All processes must be transparent, all data must be independently backed up, and all reform recommendations must be published. Not for show, but to close the loopholes Derek had exploited. In a private meeting, Jamal, the exonerated man, came to thank him. Jamal said, "I thought no one believed me." Marcus replied, "I believe it because I saw the pattern, but you shouldn't have waited until the pattern was exposed." Jamal asked, "What if you hadn't had the camera that day?" Marcus fell silent. That question was like a cut. He answered truthfully, "Maybe I would still be alive, but my life would have been dragged down a very dark path." Jamal nodded, his eyes reddening. "So how can we make sure others don't need to be as lucky as you?" Marcus said, "By law, by procedures, by independent oversight, and by ensuring that the good people in the system don't remain silent." That night, Marcus came home early. Liam ran out and hugged his legs, laughing. But when a police car drove past the house, Liam still froze. Marcus knelt down, hugging his son. "Dad's here," he said. "I'll do everything, so you don't have to be afraid of the people who should be protecting you." Liam asked, "Do you hate that man?" Marcus thought for a moment, then said, "Dad, you don't need to hate. You need to make sure he doesn't harm anyone else. And make sure there isn't another one like him." That was the most mature, and also the most painful, answer, because it acknowledged the problem wasn't with an individual. The problem was with the system that allowed that individual to exist for too long, and if the viewer only stops at feeling satisfied, then this story hasn't completed its mission. If you ask Marcus what moment he remembers most from the whole affair, it's probably not the helicopter descending, nor the moment Derek was handcuffed with his own handcuffs. The moment Marcus remembers most is when Liam asks, "Why is that man angry at Dad?" A child doesn't understand prejudice. He only understands fear, and that fear is contagious. From that night, Marcus understood that justice isn't just about the courtroom. Justice is the feeling of security in a child's chest as they sit in the car with their father. Justice is that an ordinary person can drive home without relying on luck to meet the right good person. Derek Clay lost everything. His badge, his freedom, his family, his honor. But the true price of his crime isn't just the years in prison. It's the years people live with doubt. If I tell the truth, who will believe me? Therefore, the story "Racist Cop Stops Black Dad Seconds Later, the FBI Surrounds Him" shouldn't just be a satisfying plot twist. It should be a reminder. Power needs to be monitored, and silence in the face of injustice is a form of complicity. As long as the cameras are recording, as long as the data is there, as long as there are people who dare to stand up, then justice has a chance to open its eyes. But if we turn off the cameras with indifference, if we ignore it with the thought, "It probably won't get that bad," then sooner or later another Derek will appear. And then there might not be Marcus. No emergency signal, no black car convoy. Just an ordinary family crushed under the wheels of prejudice. So, if you believe in justice, don't just believe in the grandiose moments. Believe in the small things. Demanding transparency, demanding accountability, protecting the vulnerable, and not letting fear become a habit. And if you ask, if you were Marcus, what would you do? The answer probably wouldn't be revenge, but rather, doing everything possible so that others don't have to go through it. If you want to see more stories where power is overturned by evidence, by the law, and by the courage of the right people, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and leave a comment. What do you think drove someone like Derek Clay to do what he did for so many years, and what is the most effective way to prevent it from happening again?